All right. So a few things on the agenda. So zoom in a little bit here. That's better. So a few things on the agenda. So yeah, first things first, of course, like we've got this community Discord now, which is really cool. I think we've got 20 members now, which is great. Really happy about that. And I'll talk, I need to gather some statistics because I know that you can choose which type of mothershipper, for lack of a better way of putting it, that you are. So I'll talk about that later. So we had the Akigara video release, which is, I think, my best performing video after like the length of time that it's been out. So that's been really, really cool. So thank you for those who watched it or are planning to watch. And probably the coolest thing out of it all was this. So in reaction, Doc and the other guy who, the other person who partnered him on creating Akigara. So I'm not too sure, you can't quite see it here, but there's two contributors, one being an editor, and I think Prashi does illustration as well as a lot of the writing as well. And yeah, he did something really cool, which is this promo sale of Akigara. So it is, yes, 50% off, but yeah, it's only $1 as well. And yeah, it was really cool. And also he embedded this my video here as well. So yeah, really stoked about that, and had a good chat with him about the module too. So that was awesome. And he also added some community copies as well. So for those who come across it a little bit later or want to pick one of those up, then that's there as well. But yeah, it was really cool because I haven't really had that experience before. Like obviously I've talked about producing a video and talking to the creator of that particular module, but I've never had someone actually, do something kind of like this in reaction. So that was really, really cool, and it was awesome to see. So I hope there's been a little bit of momentum to that, and that they get some, some light shown on some of their work as well. And so some of the other work that they've done. So a few of you will probably know that I'm a huge fan of this Walks of Life toolkit, which is, it gives background to Mothership classes. And I think, I'm not sure if there's probably enough to say what they've got in the image. So each of these here, they are like a particular background, and each background, for example, one of them, like at the bottom here, is this one here is self-studied, and it gives you a few adjectives that help you sort of think about, okay, well, who is this type of character? So I think one of the adjectives for that is like disciplined. And then after that, it gives you like, you've been studying your whole life towards learning about a particular skill set. But the really cool thing that I like is that it gives you a couple of questions about that background. So specific to that background is like why, like things like, why are you so interested in that background? And maybe, I'm not too sure about this one, but might be something like, okay, well, what did you sacrifice to spend so much time studying this particular thing? So that's very cool. And then there's also some like actual mechanical stuff where you will increase, in this case, I think for self-study, if I remember correctly, it's like you add increase intelligence, I believe, and you actually, because you studied one skill set so much, you actually remove one of the train skills that you may have randomly loaded as part of your character creation. And then there's also some extra like trauma responses as well. So you play with whatever trauma response you have for your class. So for a Teamster or whatever, you get to reroll panic. But then you also add this other thing. And the good thing is that you can find some creative ways of going, okay, well, studious or self-studied, I think this one. Self-studied is like, okay, well, scientist. But in reality, you can actually plug self-studied into these other ones as well. You know, if you had self-studied Teamster, they would be like an engineer, and like they're just like awesome at being an engineer, basically. Or you could, as a Marine, you could just say that they're incredibly professional Marine marksman type thing. So the good thing about the backgrounds, it allows you and sort of prompts you to be a little bit creative about like how my class can be like mixed with the background. And then the other cool thing is that it's all of the backgrounds are basically like a D20, so you could just randomly roll for your class, and you could randomly roll for your background, and then figure out how they mesh together with a combination of sort of the class, the background, the questions that you answer, and then you could also refer to either the items that you have, as well as the like the trinket or the patch as well. So you could look at that and go, okay, if my patch is this, then that means I'm this type of person. So it just gives you something nice to sort of make you think about, okay, what, yeah, who is this character and how would I play this character, rather than just going, oh, this guy's a Teamster. So yeah. And then what reflects from within, I haven't played this, I do have it. So that's something that I need to run in the future. And then, so I think that is a, well, here we go. Venture where mirrors reflect more than appearance, and the ties that bind us hold the greatest horrors of all. So I think that's it's a kind of a cool concept, an interesting one that, you know, I'm sure people have probably seen perhaps before. And then Faint Crawl, this is something that's attached to Prospero's Dream. So if you're looking for something that investigates, I think it's like a map making, I think. Yeah, so Faint Crawl is a Mothership 1E RPG map making module for 1 through 4 players, and it's a low combat setting, and you are a hopeless soul doomed to wander the oxygen-thin derelicts of a once famous downtown core. So, yeah. So if you're looking for something Prospero's Dream related, that's there for you as well. Because I know that people are like maybe playing campaigns or thinking about playing campaigns, so that's there for you too. Oh, good. Okay, also on the agenda. So now released is Dying Hard on Hardlight Station. So this is something that's sort of been almost like a standing agenda point. So I would encourage people to check that out. So it is on Kickstarter, and the good thing about it, actually I haven't got a link here, is that they're on the itch. Yeah, low combat, I imagine, would be yeah, not a lot. And I think because it's a mapping module, then it's sort of like, okay, it's a module that kind of like forces you to create the environment a little bit. So then later you could even use it for your campaign. So Hardlight, Dying Hard on Hardlight Station. Man, I need to say that properly. So there is a preview that I've shown before. So if you're kind of curious about what this looks like. There is a 40-page preview of this that you can download for free and check it out, see if that's your thing. But I know, yeah, it's incredibly like popular within the community. So I won't say too much more on that because I've said plenty on that before. One other thing that's come up, which is also another Kickstarter, is this one, which is called The Cohort, and this is by Simon Taylor. And I haven't played any of what he's done, but I've heard some good things about some of his previous stuff. So in case you're interested, The Cohort, a small letter-sized zine sci-fi horror adventure for Mothership. Transport vessel SS Liberatus has gone dark inside a volatile nebula long avoided by scouts. A stolen research crate remains on board. So do the colonists taken from a Hell's Point V biolab. You contracted to retrieve both, and yeah, it's sort of like a classic. Well, looks like a classic, so I don't want to assume that if someone who doesn't want to disclose everything about the mission, and yeah, I imagine some yeah, risk and reward in terms of being able to rescue or retrieve things on the ship. And some of the other work that he's done is this Year 11, which was kind of like a cool, interesting concept when I read through it. I don't know if, I'd be curious to know if someone has actually run either Year 11 or have run this one, Wolfsbane. I'd seen this, but I haven't, yeah, like I said, haven't played them, but in the Mothership Discord, I see like, you know, some people having some like good comments on some of the work. So, yeah. Yeah. So yeah, it's yeah, Peter, I haven't seen too many where it's like that type of style when you hear zine and it's like, okay, lots of different contributors and it's like a regular issue type thing. Yeah, I think I've seen like a couple of things that are kind of like that, or they've, and instead of it being regular, they've obviously you have like multiple contributors to, like for example that Dying Hard on Hard Light Station, like that. But yeah, haven't seen anything sort of regular for Mothership. I think someone tried to do it a while back, and I forget the name of it, but like it's, you know, volume 1, not Whole Breach, but another one. There's another sort of like zine that had different tables, and I think I had a couple of adventures. I think someone probably would know the name, but it came out quite a few years ago now. And then one thing that I wanted to show, so this is what I was talking about earlier regarding that, the artist that I'm working with in regards to the profile picture, is that they made this as part of managing the expendables. They also made this like little module as a free download. So if it's something that you're interested in, it's there. And if you have a campaign where perhaps you have a large station, there is maybe some bureaucracy that you want to introduce and create some red tape and annoyances, then this might be kind of handy for you. There's a ton of different tables in here talking about like how is your particular items like classified. So perhaps, you know, one of your players has some like incredibly ridiculous gun, is that then you can come up with some rules about, okay, well, the station that you're on has some rules about you just walking around with that. So that's very, very cool. And so it's named, do you have a license for that? And it talks about license levels, and also talks about like potential penalties as well. So you have small fine or large fine, jail time, and also lethal bounty, depending on what it is. Then it has some help about like how you might get a license in different places. And also gives a little bit of a classification of that item too. So I gave the example of weapon, but of course, like this could be medical, scientific, or industrial as well. And it also gives you some hints around like who's the likely licensing authority here as well. And also like the type of settlement as well. So you got this frontier settlement, or you got fueling station. So yeah, and then yeah, of course people might want to rent things. A little bit about repairing items, selling things. So talking about like the value of that item if it's not registered or you don't have a license for it. And here's like a list of items, but also it talks about this license level as well as the type of item that it is as well. So yeah, there's tons here in terms of, you know, helping you sort of put that into your campaign. So of course this doesn't need to be at every place, or absolutely, but if you do have a place where you'd expect some bureaucracy, and you do want to just annoy people, then you know, you can put these in here, especially, you know, if you're finding that your players are a little bit maybe overpowered with their equipment, then, you know, here's one way that you could potentially either take it off them or fine them heavily, or make it just very annoying for them. And then we've got some civilian equipment, other equipment, even like cyberware in here as well. And then I love this. I love when modules have this as like some in-game advertising. So here we've got, have you been charged with operating a registered item without a license? Call a trained lawyer and sign up to be an entrepreneur. So I thought this was pretty fun as well. G'day, Sam. How are you? Yeah, Strand, I definitely agree. Like, I love how the system is like the foundation, and then people go, oh, I've got like a kind of a weird idea where this could be interesting for a situation, or maybe a set of rules that could be quite fun. So yeah, I really love that sort of thing. It's really, really cool as well. But yeah, I wanted to show this off. You know, it is free, and it's something that you can pick up on itch. And I think there's some value in it, especially if you are playing a campaign and you want to, you know, create a bit of like conflict tension between an NPC or something like that. Fair enough. You're allowed to do that. So yeah, so this one is called, do you have a license for it? So yeah, adding some bureaucracy to maybe in a location, especially if it's a station or a colony that the players have just arrived at and they're not familiar with it, and you would expect some red tape, then this is great for that. Okay. What else did I have on the agenda? Okay. So some demographics. So I wonder if there's a good way I could actually show this. Probably not. So yeah, I should have planned this a little bit better actually. So in our member list, if I was to have a look, we've got a few space truckers. So if you don't know, in the community, the community Discord, I've added some roles, and those roles are for different, like, basically I pinched it out of the campaign frames that are in the Warden's operation manual, and those campaign frames are kind of like, okay, well, who is your party? And then when people come into the Discord, is that they'll choose one of them. So to give people an idea of what those are, if you're not sure what I'm referring to, is that so I have to remember what page this is. This one here. So basically just gave people an option for choosing one of these. And then we have, so I won't show people's like names and stuff like this on here. So here's a bit of a selection. So we have some space truckers. So we've got a few of those. We've got quite a few corporate inspectors. We've got a dog of war. Denizen is like the default. So if you don't choose a role, then you'll get just denizen. And then we've got a couple of explorers. And then after that, we have even more corporate inspectors. A few more corporate inspectors, explorer. We have one off-world colonists, another space trucker, a couple of explorers, and then we've got one of the bots that I've got. So I've just deemed it as the solar salvager. Yes, one salvager. Nice. About to be two. No. Nice. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm hoping, it's just a bit of fun for people to come in and to take a look at, other ones. And of course, like if you, with your Discord account, like on the right-hand side, you should be able to see like the member list, so you can see that. But I thought that was kind of like a fun thing to sort of ask people on the way in, is that, I'm not too sure what it says, whether it's like preferred character style or preferred type of mission or scenario or anything like this, or it's just how you see yourself in everyday life. I don't know, but I thought it was like a cool little thing to add. So yeah. Okay, Peter. Okay, we are doing this on the penal colony planet where prisoners have organized themselves and made it so easy to set conflicting factions. Who controls the commissariat and job assignments? Nice. Okay, cool. Very cool. Yeah, it sounds like quite fun. No, you should be able to, if you're in the community Discord, you should be able to click your profile and then see which one you've chosen. Oh, in terms of the license for that. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah. Oh, that's cool. Right. And so are they, do you have a fine system? So like people are like, you have like standard standard fines for different types of things or not? DTC is an explorer. Nice. You got it. You got it. Under control. I think next time I'll create like a little slide where I can show these together with the count as well. But yeah, it's kind of a nice thing to sort of, I thought it would be quite fun to do. And yeah, if you're kind of like curious about what some of the others are, I know I didn't see anyone being like a crash lander, for example. And of course, I think you can change it later as well. So if you go back up to channels and roles, I think in the top left, if you're on the, what do you call it? If you're on the desktop application, then you should be able to change that as well. That could be a problem in DTC. Okay, so I think I've kind of like ripped through most of the agenda that I wanted to sort of have in a nice sort of front load it a little bit. Yeah, fair enough. So yeah, if you've got any questions about some of these things that I've mentioned, please send a message. Be happy to talk about it now. But yeah, well, I'm curious about your experience, Peter, with do you have a license for it? Like, is this something that you find that you reference a lot, especially in the type of game that you've got? And could you see yourself using it in other situations as well? So I'm waiting on an answer there, but for a Warden tip, so I picked out a couple of things here, and hopefully they are different enough, I think, that we can talk about. So the first one here is, yeah, what to emphasize in a scene and how to avoid railroading. So I thought this was a good question, and this is from Strand, who gave gave me a few notes a little while ago. Oh, right. Sorry, I misinterpreted Peter. So Peter says, I haven't used it, as in you have a license for it, but it would work well. Not so much fines, but access to specific without being on a side. Right, okay. Yep, I get what you mean. Yeah, it could be a way of like, you know, if you wanted to do some like loose categorization as well, you know, in terms of like who you need to go talk to, because effectively, like the authority that gives out the licenses, that could be just like some dude who is responsible for that type of contraband or whatever, and then the different categories of those items. They mention like a medic. Let me see. Otherwise, I'm just like making it up. Like this part here is that you could, with this licensing authority, you could probably like shoehorn some of them in. Like you could probably say, okay, who is the character or faction or NPC who kind of would be this local sheriff type person. So I don't know if what's happened to like the prison guards or anything like that in your scenario. It looks like the prisoners have basically got control, but I'm sure that you could figure out maybe different roles for some of the faction, as well as like maybe if you've gone that detailed about like the actual prisoners that are there and which factions have which prisoners, then you could probably figure out some way of going, okay, well, this is how I could use it, and they are kind of, you know, in this licensing authority type situation. Yeah. And then you might be a bit more creative with like drugs and stuff like that as well. So yeah, you might separate that out as well. Old Australia. Well, as a New Zealander, I've got an opinion on that, but it's always fun to remind Australians about that. But yeah, no, I totally get you. It's kind of, yeah, that was kind of like a crazy, that's like the history, that one, with Australia for sure. Yeah, people got sent there for doing very little in England, and then yeah, ended up out there, which is nuts to think about. That they got put on a boat for, I don't know, months probably to get out there. Nice, that'll be cool. Yeah, that'd be great. That does remind me, I should probably put in like an it probably would fit into like the homebrew channel perhaps, but if people want to do those after action write-ups, then we might also dedicate like a specific channel to that as well. So I actually did have another question that I didn't have on my agenda, which is, so like what other community events would people be interested in? G'day, Fusili, how are you? So the reason why I ask this is that, yes, there is a stream. Yes, the stream is recorded. The stream is recorded and put in a place that people can reference and look back on whenever they like. And this weekend, we're trialing like a game with some of the members of the community. But I do realize that organizing games is that by default, they are often with a select few, and people might not be that interested in playing games because they have one. Yeah, people might not be interested in playing games. They're more interested in like, okay, figuring out how to run things. So I had like one idea, which is a bit more of like a show and tell. Yeah, Sam's got we're on the same page here. So yeah, I think maybe like an informal thing would be good to start out and just see what happens from there. And then later do like a show and tell maybe, or like a workshop. Oh, nice. I like that idea, Peter, for sure. So it might be like a co-working lobby where maybe you're working on something and it might not be a lot said in terms of like, because it could be distracting to people, but you know, people could pipe up and say, oh, I got a question or something like this every so often. Yeah, I like that idea. So the co-working lobby, I would see that as just having like a channel that is open all the time and people could join it. And then if they wanted to, you know, basically be open to someone else like potentially distracting them, or you know, feel a little bit more compelled to work on their own stuff, whatever. So I like that idea. I hadn't thought about that one actually, so that's cool. Thank you, Peter. Yeah, I think Sam, in terms of the informal jam stuff, yeah, it could be not even like organized. So you know, it could be just people just going into the lobby and, you know, basically saying, hey, I'm around if you want to chat, or whatever. And what I was thinking in terms of the show and tell is maybe there's a module that you've recently picked up, or maybe one that you've run, or you've been like some of the homebrew stuff. So yeah, first of all, thank you, Sam, and also there's been a few others that have put in like tons of stuff in the homebrew channel, which is really, really cool. And that's been like so much fun to like read through some of that stuff. And to be honest, I haven't commented enough on them because there's just tons, but that's been really cool to see. And it gives, you know, it feeds like new ideas and things like that. So I know that sometimes if you're putting that homebrew stuff in there and you don't get much of a reaction, it can feel like you're kind of like going, my baby, like no one is that interested. But no, truly, like I can speak from personal experience, like it's hugely, it's so interesting to see what people are doing, because people are just doing things that are very, very different. And yeah, I really enjoy seeing people contribute to that homebrew stuff. So that's really, really cool. A channel dedicated to discussions / resources for the non-game part, so sourcing art, formatting tools. Yeah, we could put that in. I think that, yeah, I'm happy to create those channels, and then of course we can always archive them later, because they're pretty much, they can be quite temporary. But that could be quite good, like that sort of stuff. I think, yeah, I'm happy to put that in. So I'm going to write these down, because otherwise I will forget. So and then you probably already know this, Sam. I find like the subreddit can be quite good for some of that stuff as well, and of course, like not just like Mothership stuff, but also other games that people don't source a lot of like the yeah, some really cool material from like old books and stuff like that. And I think who was it? Someone found this like incredible book, and where was that? Definitely in the, here's the thing. Yeah, DTC. Yeah, you put in this this incredible naval weapon systems book. It was insane. That was very, very cool. But yeah, I think yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm absolutely happy to have that channel there as well. And if it gets used, then great. If it's not, then fine. That's not a big deal. So yeah, the subreddit for OSR is pretty handy as well. But I think you would find it in like lots of different TTRPGs. Yeah, thank you, DTC. Yep. So that particular, actually, I hope DTC you don't mind here, but what I can do, I can kind of like show off that book. If that, So this is the book that DTC managed to come across. Yeah, it is actually insane. I just love this icon, like this symbol on the front as well. It's just awesome. Yeah, it's got some really cool images. In this case, explosions. You know, to be honest, my mind went somewhere else when I saw this one for the first time. Yeah, just because I'm in the gutter. And then yeah, some great like old schematics and blueprints and stuff like that. And yeah, it's very, very cool. But yeah, diagrams for all types of stuff. Really, really cool. yeah, I know. I was looking at this one as well, like this acoustic variability along the east coast of the United States. And yeah, so I'm guessing this was probably for like radar and submarines, I'm guessing is the use case here. Oh yeah, there we go, sonar. It's even mentioned at the bottom here. But yeah, I like these books are so cool. Just like look through, and that reminds me of a like a long time ago. I found this like war atlas. I think it probably got published in the 1980s or whatever, but it definitely had that same sort of vibe in terms of the font and stuff like that. And it had like lots of infographics about, you know, losses of soldiers and stuff like this, and also different types of weapons. And but yeah, it was very cool. Like the style is very, very yeah, very, very cool. But yeah, okay. Yeah, thanks for the feedback in regards to like some other like events and stuff like that. Yeah, really happy if people are, you know, want to hang out, especially if they're doing stuff, then that's awesome. And I'll organize a few of those channels and stuff like that. So I'll just put a note here for like, I'll put resources, but I know this is the one that Sam mentioned. I'll put art here as well, otherwise I'll forget. Cool. Okay, so thank you for that. A bit of a community discussion, I guess. So I wanted to go on to the Warden tips here. And the first one here is this: what to emphasize in a scene and how to avoid railroading. So I think the thing that I try and keep in mind as much as possible is that is whatever the characters can sense. So what can they see? What can they smell? What is there to be touched? What can they hear? And that environmental stuff is trying to like give like as accurate description of that as much as possible without going into like, oh, you think this, like your character thinks this, for obvious reasons. Like you're kind of like removing a bit of, you know, character agency, or well, at least player agency, like trying to figure out how to interpret these signals, these senses and feelings and stuff like that. So I think that's a really important thing. But what it does mean is that you now rely on, it does mean that your descriptions have to be like a little bit, you know, invoking those feelings, like those reactions, you know, if you just say, you walk into a lab, it's like, okay, you know, there's not a lot really with that. So if you're trying to fill that up with filling it obviously with more content, but also with what do you call it? You know, with just adjectives and making sure that they see maybe important things for the story or things that they can interact with. Because yes, you might have a map if you're playing in like a virtual tabletop, or if you are playing in person, you might have a map as well. And I find, like, if I'm a player, if I have a map and I know where I am, and someone's given me like a very good description of the room or whatever, or the space, then I can contribute story to the game. So I think that is what I think about as a warden in particular, is that trying to keep, like, I'm telling them like what their senses can interact with, but I'm not telling them what they feel. Sam mentions, it's a difficult line to walk in a game that revolves heavily around saves and panic. Yeah, for sure. I think there is some times where I feel like, oh, you see a dead body, and from a game mechanic point of view, and trying to sort of build up tension and making, you know, the sort of like downward spiral of the players, is that I'm always at tension where it's like, do I just call straight out for like a fair save or a sanity save, or do I just leave it for them to, and I trust them that they can make good judgment that for this character in this situation, they see whatever they're sensing around them, that, okay, I need this character to roll. I think that can be hard because, you know, if you have got characters that are for a one shot and you've chosen a Marine, and then it's like, oh, you walk into a room and there's like a dead body, blood on the ground and stuff like that, then, well, you know, it's a very easy excuse for your for a player to say that for this character, he's a Marine, he's seen lots of dead bodies, he's been in war, this is no problem, and like not roll anything. So I always feel like a bit of tension there when I'm like, okay, do I just straight out call for it, or do I let people decide? And I think that just depends on your players and their familiarity with the system as well, and whether they are cognizant or they really know that, okay, well, part of this game is that it is a downward spiral for these characters, and to let that happen. But I'm sure, like, as soon as you get into campaign play, it's like, oh, well, I kind of want to protect this character for next time. And so people are probably not going to voluntarily just say, oh, yeah, he definitely is stressful here, or he or she, for sure. So that's something that I always think about. One thing that hangs me up about sensory descriptions is forgetting when characters are suited up. That's a good point. So if they are in vac suits, obviously they can see, they could probably hear, but they're not smelling. So what what do you do in that situation? Like, you know, you can't, you know, if there is some like smell that is of a dead body that they can't see or whatever, then what, you know, which can be quite fun because you're kind of like leaving it for later. But if that's important to the story, then you might have to think about whether there is some sort of like readout, like in their suit, whether there is some sort of readout or some indication that air quality is really poor where they are, especially if there is some sort of filtration system. But yeah, I think that's a good, like an important question to keep track of when people are set it up. Yeah. Exactly. Like you wouldn't smell stuff if you're in a vac suit. That's quite true. But hopefully the reason why that smell exists, that there is something that that smell would be like the first indicator of something wrong. But then, they discover something that is actually causing the smell, but they couldn't smell it earlier, and that's the problem. But yeah, I don't know, especially if it's like just gas filling the room, then it's like, okay, well, there's no effect and they can't smell it unless they take off their helmet or whatever. So, yeah. What war? Law drop or panic check? That's a good point. That maybe that's the way to do it, is just to force people to go, okay, well, why? Like what happened? Why should this character not be fearful of a dead body on the floor? Yeah, for sure. Okay, so yeah, Strand, that's a good point. A bit of like hand waving in terms of like the vac suit. There is some indicator. Yeah, for sure. Smell-o-vision. Yes, definitely. Yeah. And I think if you have the opportunity to talk about smell, then that's really, really great. Like if I think about another bug hunt, for example, you walk into the base. The base is obviously in this like jungle planet, and there's been like bullet holes in the roof. There's rain being come through into like some of the rooms and stuff like that. And it's not been touched. Spoiler alert, there are bodies. So I think in that particular example, then smell is really, really great because the atmosphere is breathable, and so people aren't going to be like, well, generally, people aren't going to be wearing a suit by default or don't feel the need to wear a suit. So in that situation, smell just take advantage because people, I would say that players do have a greater reaction to that. If you are explaining that, the smell is like moldy and like sickening and humid and like these types of things, is that places that character and places that person in there so much better than just saying, oh, the floor's wet. So I think there's like, if you have the chance to add smell, is really underrated. Yeah, air quality readout. I think that is probably one thing to do. I mean, that's just kind of like off the top of my head, but some sort of alert that the composition of the air has changed. And that way, at least in that vac suit or whatever, that you do have some indicator like, okay, I was in a space that this wasn't a problem, but I have walked into a space where it is. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Yeah, you see a grisly sight and the smell of blood hits your nostrils. Yeah, totally. But my character's wearing a suit. Yes, they are. Yep, for sure. Yeah, definitely had that situation before. It's like, oh, I don't smell anything. Yeah. Judging sensory range. Okay. Example, the room at the end of the long hall has a light on, but I don't see that until I read the key description. Might be too late. Yeah, okay. So this is a good point about light. I haven't played too many where lighting is like super, super important, but I do know that, it is there's plenty of modules that light is super important. So I think as like a warden, if I was to run something like that, then one part of that is like prepping the environment. So, and what I mean by that, and I think people have mentioned it actually on stream before, is that if you actively like draw out the map, and I'm sure like, yes, there are some modules where the map is massive, like Bloom or whatever, but if you have some indication of like what, in terms of matching it up with, okay, this room and what are people going to sense in this room? And I'm using sense a lot here just because it's useful here. Then that way you might be able to get a bit of an indication about, okay, what can, like from this perspective, when they come around this corner, like what are they sensing? And by placing yourself in those positions, then you can kind of get an idea of like what is their point of view, especially in terms of lighting. But I realize that that is a bit crazy to do that. So I haven't really played a lot with being aware of, okay, that light that comes out of that room, it might be dark otherwise, but there is something. And but it is an opportunity, of course, like to make things interesting. Like, if you see that there is light down the hallway and then something is in front of it, then that's it's kind of a bit scary for people, I imagine. So yeah, so that sort of, for me, it kind of, that's how I try and think about in terms of like emphasizing in a scene, is that trying to build enough of a picture for people to interact with. And like we've mentioned here, is that especially with a game like it was a really good earlier, who was it, Sam, with like sanity saves, it's like, okay, there are going to be some games and some groups where it's like, okay, these guys are just avoiding saves, they're just trying to avoid saves. But it does make a lot more sense where you might have to push them a little bit to go, okay, well, these characters would react to the situation, and especially if it's mechanically important. Because otherwise, if someone's like a very, very experienced space trucker or whatever, then they've seen lots of stuff. Yeah, sanity save, I don't need it. So it kind of breaks the game a little bit, because you end up with people who, they end the session on like a stress of like 5 or 6 or whatever, and it's almost like they've just been out for a walk and nothing's really happened to them. The second part of this is talking about railroading. So I guess when I think of railroading, it's very much like, am I leading them along something where like they have to interact with this thing for this scenario to work? Then I would say that's a bit of a problem, because you can't really expect people to do exactly what you think they will do. If you take like The Haunting of Epsilon 14, for example, is that there are some tricks to it, but yeah, it's when you're sort of like pushing people to do something, but they're actually going like, why would my character do that? It doesn't make a lot of sense. HUD displays the message, hey, you should check out that event. Yeah, the HUD supply, yeah, the notification, right? That's very true. I think with like the way that I try to do it with Haunting of Epsilon 14 is that I wanted people to go into like the mess area, the bunks, and the washroom, I think it's called in that scenario. And so what I ended up doing is that I just I found someone else did this as well, is that I just made sure that the elevator was broken when they turned up, or it wasn't working for whatever reason, and then one of the engineers is fixing it. And then often people, like one of the teamsters from the group will go and like try and help, but then the other people will be like, all right, well, I'm going to explore these other parts and go into these other, like the washroom and so on and so forth. So, yeah. I think save values, yeah, that's a good point. Like the save values kind of handle like if someone comes into a scenario and you are confronted by something, if your save value is high, like I think it's like scientists have like a really high sanity value, then it's like, okay, like your save does that work. Whereas, if it's really, really low, then it's like, okay, well, unfortunately, your character, I should say, is not very sane or doesn't respond well to things that question their sanity. Yeah, that's another thing. Like if you want to lead them to the mine, like I'm not too sure if you're putting if you're saying that okay, they are in the elevator and they go down, and you can't use the elevator for a little while, or you're saying like, oh, come with us to the mine. Then either way is quite good. But yeah, so there's a little bit of ways that you can kind of like cut off areas temporarily, and you might not be railroading, like going, oh, you go here and then here and then here, but you're basically like cutting off an option for a while. And then the way that I did it was that they were sort of like half an hour of in-game time. Yeah, right, okay, so they're already heading down. Yeah, so that's another way. So you could just say that I can't remember if they actually say how long the elevator takes in that module, but you could just say like 20 in-game minutes or whatever. Yeah, I should really check that out. Yeah, I think Sonia, is it Sonia? Sonia does that a little bit, just says like, oh, he's missing, he didn't come back up. So yeah, that sort of does the little NPC where it's like, oh, you should check that out. Right, that's a good point. Yeah, you automatically cut those guys off. So I find it quite fun to, but I like that idea. I might try that next time I run it. I quite like having people sort of like spread out between the mess, the bunks, and the washroom, and then later one of them goes to the, like, especially if it's in the mess, then that's really good. Like I think I often have Kentaro, who is already infected, and I'm trying to remember NPC names now. The guy with the cat, the guy who has the cat, I can't remember his name. But I often have them in the mess, and then when the group walks into the mess for the first time, they find those two, and then Morgan. Thank you. Good memory thing. Unless you've got the booklet in front of you, it's not a closed book test. So I often put those two there, and then Morgan maybe walks with the group back to the bunks or walks out later, and then when they go back in, and then later he goes and finds Kentaro, with blood all over the wall, etc. So yeah, or he's completely disappeared as well, like only evidence of a fight, but no body. That's always an option too. Yeah. Yeah, Morgan's a woman's name, so you could play it either way. I think I just imagined. I think I must have watched Nobody Wake the Bugbears playthrough, and they played Morgan as a guy. But yeah, I think you could. I think I must have just, when they played it, I must have just assumed and sort of didn't really think about the name as well. Yeah, Morgan's a common surname as well. That's true. Yeah. Yeah. What about the other ones? You got like Rosa, which could be a surname as well. Sonia's a first name. But yeah, I kind of assume that they're all like first names. Yeah, Morgan does pretty well, I find, usually. I think it's, oh man, like now I'm trying to remember NPC names. Yeah, Kentaro is not ideal, his situation. Ashraf, in my ones, he usually goes down the mine. Ree doesn't do well. There's been a couple of times where I've sort of just like left them in the washroom, and then they get Ree gets left in the washroom, and then they come across someone using the toilet later, come across Ree just half eaten or something like this. So that's usually a gruesome bathroom horror scene. Giovanni's the doctor. But yeah, I can't remember the other ones. But yeah, I find it quite fun. Like if they are in the bunks and the mess and the washrooms, is that they are very close there. And if they are very close, that someone like goes, oh, something happened in the next room, then that sort of like ups the tension a little bit. Can't forget Prince. Yes, I was a little bit unhappy with it. Unfortunately, Prince didn't really make an appearance in my last time. Like Prince was the reason why my players did not go into the vents at all. I just said, oh, so you can hear like light tapping in the vents, like trying to describe there's Prince walking around the vents, and none of the players were interested at all. They're just like, nah, no deal, no way I'm getting up. So yeah, that was always quite fun. I always see corporate, first name shallow. Yeah, fair enough. Here to do a job. Yeah, that's a good point. Like I imagine, like you could easily do that for Morgan and say that's their surname, and yeah, that's what they're known as and commonly called. So yeah. Yeah, Strand. Yeah, that's a good point. So I think that's something that often to like a new group of players you might have to explain a little bit, is like, you know, you have gone to the effort of creating a scenario, and if they are being extremely cautious or they are being very conservative about their play, then I think that movie analogy, that movie idea is really, really good to go with. Okay. You know, you are characters in a movie, but be aware that your characters are not really heroic. They're in like a terrible situation. And however, the other people that are in the space are important to them. So they might act in a certain way where it's like, you know, if it was just you, it's just like, we should just go back to the ship and go. So yeah. Ping says, yeah, I usually explain to my players that due to the nature of it being a horror game, they need to buy into the horror, otherwise it's not going to work. Yeah. So sort of the similar idea there. And hopefully, you know, after us like one session, then people kind of get the hang of it. And especially if you're just playing one shots, then, you know, you're going to get new players will get, you know, it will kind of depend, but you might have people who are just like very conservative about how they play. But hopefully if you play enough one shots and people have played enough Mothership one shots, is that people will just be like, yep, I'm just opening the door, not a problem, whatever. Like, because that's the thing, is that their characters are always unfamiliar with the environment, unless there are NPCs to tell them not to go in a place, or there's like barricaded rooms and stuff like that. Then really, you know, how do they know that it's going to be terrible inside of that room? One of my crew's first ask is, where are the escape pods? And like I don't think I've seen in most modules. It's like the Star Wars equivalent of it, control panels over vast chasms. Yeah, that's quite true. I think one thing there, like I'm not too sure how they're asking, like if they're asking like above table, whatever, then I think it's kind of like this kind of goes into another sort of topic, which is like really asking like how would their character know that particular information? Is it from previous experience they would expect the escape pods to be in a particular part of the ship? Do they know that this particular ship would have escape pods? And kind of like pushing back on like, you know, doing like above table stuff that their characters have no idea of, and kind of like, you know, drawing back of what's there. So yeah, I'm not too sure if that's the way that they're asking you, DTC, but yeah. Helps with buy-in to future session. Exactly. Can help that sort of like movie cinematic thing. I think that's really important because then, you know, they enjoy it. And then of course, like in many situations, it is down to a bit of chance that things work out for them or not. Of course, you have like sometimes where it goes horribly wrong for a character and they roll panic and then they fail the panic and then it's like it goes downhill very, very fast. But yeah, there aren't any escape pods. The company doesn't budget for escape pods. Quite true. And of course, like there might be some ships that don't really hold them, or maybe they're like it's kind of like jury rigged, or maybe the ship was stolen in the first place and all the escape pods are already gone. Then sure. Every room is terrible in Mothership. Yes, Gabrielle. Yes, that's quite true. That's quite true. Yeah, it's always a funny feeling where it's just like, well, we do need to go into the next room, but I don't want to be the first kid to go through. So there's a bit of like, someone else can go through first and be, you know, bear the brunt of whatever is on the other side. That's quite true. Listening at the door is always an option. It's quite true, Sam. Very true. Budget cuts. Yeah, budget cuts for like not having escape pods. Yeah, there's quite a few reasons. They could be sabotaged. The company doesn't want to spend money on the maintenance for them, so they could be there, but they don't work that well. They could have already been taken. They could be jury rigged into something else. Maybe someone used, I don't know, some mechanisms and they're in some other part of the ship. Yeah, there's some other tournament Nexus lunch. Yeah, I think, yeah, there's a few ideas that you could do with escape pods rather than just saying that they're not there. Yeah. That's the neat part of sending some NPCs along with your group. Easy cannon fodder and favorite vote for your room first. Very true. Yeah, often it doesn't work out well for those guys. Yeah, but also it does telegraph like what will happen and what the capabilities of whatever the horror is on that other side. So I think that can be quite good. But yeah, I quite like it when it's like just the PCs and then like one of them has to sort of make a move, especially when there's like high tension for sure. Escape pods are a long shot on the rim. Not a lot of traffic to come and rescue you in time. Yeah, thanks, Power Axon. Thank you for chiming in. Yeah, definitely, it is a risk. You know, are you actually even going to be found? Especially depending on where you are. That is quite true. But yeah, I haven't really dug into escape pods that much, and I don't know what the sort of the expectation people have for how long you can survive in one for, and how they work and how they travel. Yeah, derelict wait times are fun too. Yeah, Gabriel mentioned his campaign sounds like a lot of fun, and players are trying to get around a system without their own transport, and yeah, sounds like it's hard, not ideal for them. So yeah, example there. We did 15 months in a cryopod after hard light blew up. So he's running part of the hard light station stuff. So yeah, sounds quite a lot of fun. Not your universe. It's definitely not easy. That's for sure. They have to work hard. But yeah, spoiler for Gabriel's one. But yeah, nice to see you, Nuna Gaming. Thank you for coming in. And yeah, Gabriel's like a fun thing. But anyway, so have I really answered the railroading thing? Not really. So I would say in terms of railroading, I'm not too sure if there's like a specific example that you wanted to talk about, Strange, but I think there are some like creative ways that you can do things where you kind of like cut off areas, or like the Ypsilon one is the most obvious one that I can think about, where they don't have access temporarily to something. Then that is one way that you can do that. But yeah, I'd be happy to like discuss something a little bit more, Strand, if there was like a particular example where maybe you're thinking about that I haven't really quite considered here. And the next part of this was also talking about like risk of character death and having non-heroic characters. So I guess this is coming from like other games where you might be like quite conservative about like how where you put your character, and also that the characters themselves in Mothership, their stats are not good. Basically, they're just not good. Like in many cases, you have a less than 50-50 chance to even succeed at something. So I think the key thing to remember, of course, is that in Mothership you're not rolling all the time for stuff, and the stats in particular are for like you're trying to do something in a stressful situation, and this particular person under stress trying to use their intelligence for something, or using their strength for something, this is how likely they will be successful. So I think that's an important thing. And then the risk type stuff, yeah. In many cases, you've got a couple of wounds anyway for characters. So if you do a lot of damage at first to a particular character, then they're more than likely to soak it up once. It's not very often, but I would say it would be unlikely that you'd have a particular enemy or horror that would just like straight up one-shot people. Like, it's not very fair. And especially if you're like the characters get ambushed by this thing and it's like, well, you're dead. So yeah, I think that's important to, the risk is there. People playing Mothership, probably have some explanation that, okay, well, this is, you are kind of, you're people in outer space. You're not necessarily going to be like in these situations all the time. Of course, like once you're in a campaign, it kind of changes a little bit. However, the the horrors are not going to be, in many cases all of them are going to be lethal in some way, shape, or form, and that's part of it, is really remembering that that mantra of Mothership, which is around the solve, save, or was it solve, save, survive? Yeah. I always give my players a blaze of glory death. Not that they succeed, but they can try one cool thing before they ride the Eternal Space Truck to the nebula. Yeah, I think, especially when you've got, like, if the scene like definitely calls for that sort of thing, then oh yeah, mantra, choose one, of course. So yeah, I think if that makes sense, of course, like if they are, if they get skewered by something and they've got a last action or whatever, then yeah, totally, there's a bit of opportunity for a blaze of glory for sure. And that's always a lot of fun too. Like, if can you imagine like rolling like a critical success or something like this on the blaze of glory? That would be quite incredible. From a campaign perspective, where we have played with these characters for a few sessions, right? Yep. Yeah, especially that, I think, where people get a bit of connection with a character that they've played with for a few sessions, especially to to fill in the story. And one really cool thing that I've seen, I'm not too sure if this is like widespread, whether people do this a lot, but I've noticed in Discords that have a campaign is that they have a channel just for like the obituaries, or at least like the notes about how someone died and when they died and what session it was and stuff like that. And it's always kind of funny with like the memorials or memories of those things. Yeah, so those are always quite quite funny, like to have that as part of your game, and also part of the lore of the game or the campaign especially. I think that's a lot of fun. That's really, really cool to do that. And so I think the risk of character death stuff and non-heroic characters is really, making sure that people know that they are in that, alien type of movie where they are, that first one where they are going into like a place that's, very unfamiliar. They don't do this for a day job. They're there because of some circumstances, whether they're trying to like gain something, or there's a big reward or something like this. I think that is really important to make sure that that is put in place. And especially if there is some reward of like going further, then I think that's really important. Like, I think the main reasons why many people change like the Haunting of Epsilon 14, like they change it and just like add objectives or do something slightly different, is that if you play it as written, I mean, there's I think that for many groups there's just the temptation of like, why don't we just leave? Like, there's no point of us being here. And so I think if you've got something that is kind of pulling people into like further into the map, then that's going to be like really, really useful to make people sort of question that risk reward of whatever that next action that they're taking, whether it's to go into that particular room or ignore it or go into the storage or whatever. So as long as that there is something more than just like, oh, we're exploring, we're just finding some stuff. If there are some other objectives where people are like, okay, well, I kind of have to keep going. Like I have to find this particular thing, or we have to find this particular thing, but we don't know where it might be. And even if they do have a particular idea of where that is, you're still sort of like pulling them through the map. And I think that is where you kind of get that risk reward from. So yeah, hopefully that kind of helped a little bit with those two things. I know it was a bit of like a waffling a little bit, but hopefully that helps. I love the idea of a campaign obituary section. Yeah, I think to be honest, I would say it's something that, especially if you're playing like open table or that type of campaign where there's lots of different people coming in and out, then I think that's really great, because I can say from personal experience, when I played a game that Gabrielle was involved in, I think it was at the end of January, someone else's character, who was this android who participated in a few other sessions, that android got destroyed last weekend or the weekend before, I can't remember. And, and then that character came up in the obituaries, and then, as wages of sin, thank you. So, exactly. So with that in mind, is like, other players who had some, Creighton, that's right. So once, if you have other players that are involved in that open table, but had like one session with that particular character, there's like some like connective tissues. And here's an example of what that looks like. So Creighton, Android, 21st of February 2026, so game session date. Dissolved in corrosive acid, logic core recovered. So in this case, in the session that I played, it was Creighton, because of the topics in the session, was talking about like facts about chimpanzees and other primates and stuff like this. And then, the logic core gets recovered, and I think I just commented, thank God we will still have chimpanzee facts until the end of time. So it's a cool idea for sure. Okay, Axon says, in my run of Epsilon 14, the players were sent to the colony to pick up the ore they've been mining. The loading process takes a while, around 12 hours, and that gave them the excuse to stay away. Yeah. Like for me, I have to put something more than that, because it's just like, stick around a while. It's like, okay, there's a guy in the mine and he's not come back. And if I'm super conservative, like, why should I go down there? And why should I stick around? So, I find that for that particular module, like, you need like a little bit more to like get people a little bit more invested in going and checking things out. So I think in terms of the objectives that I generally give, is that I give like an objective really vague about what Dr. Giovanni's doing, is like to kill, I like sort of play that Giovanni hasn't been in contact for the last few days either. And so then it's like, okay, bring back some like report or some of his work or something like that. And then that forces them to like, figure out how to get onto you know, and it forces them to go and do some stuff and collect things and figure out where those are. And I think that's better than just go, oh, well, stick around, because people are going to, you know, do stuff for you and load it on the ship, and you're just hanging out. And then it's, you know, I think just having some sort of mystery that your characters aren't that connected to, then it's like, well, why? So, all right, Peter says, KS9 android died being a dumbass who tried to assassinate the one person that would have unlocked the mystery you were trying to solve. This is now being, well, that's an unfortunate result. Yeah, I guess didn't choose wisely about what happened there. I'm not bitter. Well, maybe. Let's say. We can't load up any of your cargo while we're missing crew. You'll either have to wait until we find them, or you can help out. Yeah, I mean, of course, like that's like a little bit more encouragement, and people will be like, oh, okay, let's help out. Yeah. But yeah, I find like if I'm just doing it as is, like as it's written, I always find like, I wish, like I remember the first time I ran it and I'm like, I wish I had more to like push people into the different parts of the map. And especially interacting with Dr. Giovanni, because I think that is a cool aspect of it, where it's like, you know, people have to figure out, you know, how to find them, what they need to do, how to interact with them. And that's always a great scene as well. You know, coming across him and what he looks like, and what he's doing, and also what else people can find there as well. So yeah. Yeah. So I've kind of come to the end of my agenda, but is there any questions that have come up during this conversation? I say conversation, but yeah, reading text and answering stuff. Like, are there other questions that you know? It could be module related. It could be like wardening related. It could be related to like the community as well. So I'm very happy to respond, or at least try to respond to some of those. But I think next time I'll have to add on like a couple of more Warden tips to like make sure that I completely fill up the time. But one question I can ask is, if people are, what are people preparing, or what are people going to be playing on the weekend? I know that I have a game of Akigara that I'm running for in our community. And then I'm not too sure about Sunday. I think I do have a session involved, but yeah, we'll see. Haven't really organized that Sunday session too much. What are tips you learned from running Mothership that could be applied to other games? That's a good question. I mean, to be honest, I've only really played a lot of Mothership, and I haven't had a ton of experience with other systems, enough where I could like give you like a really solid answer there. But what are some things that you could take? I think probably, and this goes back to what we talked about a little bit earlier about like how you treat like the immersion aspect of it, and this would probably apply to other games as well, but really as a player, as much as you can, try and keep yourself understanding, like, what does this character know? And if I do have a question about the world, how would my character find out? Like, how would they go about figuring out if there are escape pods? I think that would be something that I've personally learned, and something more recently is that I think with with novice players and stuff like that, there is this temptation to be like, well, hey Warden, do you think there is this in this area? But I think that's a really important thing, is like, as a Warden, kind of like push back on that and go like, how could your character find that out? Is there a way that they could find that information out? I think that would be really important, kind of like pushing back on those like over the table questions, especially about the world. I mean, of course, about mechanics is different, but I think that would be one thing that I would say I've learned. So, yeah, thank you, Gerald. Thank you for chiming in. This desired stress per session. Yeah, good question, Sam. So maximum stress, of course, is 20. I think if I was to say if I had to say on average for the group, what would their average stress be at the end? I mean, if they're getting up towards like 14, 15, My video has gone, I think. My camera says it's on. So can someone tell me if you can see me or not? Yeah, okay, cool. I am going to try. Yeah, it's audio only from now on. Okay. All right, I should be back. Yeah, thanks, Peter. Thanks for sticking around. Yeah, apologies about that. It just like went black for some reason. It's really weird. So I don't know if it's like storm related or anything, but forgot to plug in the laptop. That is a real danger for my laptop, because the laptop does not last long on battery. And that's after replacing its original battery as well. But yeah. I hope you guys didn't mind the audio only experience, but I think let's go back to answering some of these questions here, just so I can like say that I've ticked them off. Desired stress per session. If people are getting up to 13, 14, I think that's really interesting, because there's a good chance they will have some sort of debilitating condition. And, it's either, if it's campaign wise, then it's really not ideal if it lasts a while, but yeah, there is something that is, it's going to be a problem. And of course, like if anyone's taking wounds, you do have some risk of course, this is the physical injury part, but there is some, very small, but there is some risk of, them doing some real damage. I'm slowly prepping Impossible Landscapes with Delta Green. I was supposed to have a DG game on Saturday, but was cancelled. It's a shame thing. I hope you managed to get that game or get it up and running. Nada. Okay, so you're not running or playing anything DTC. All right, all good. We'll figure out what railroad tracks to lay down after last night's session. All right, I guess you're trying to figure out where to point your game a little bit. I have a bigger question, maybe for another time. How are people handling online games? My group is about to do one over Discord with cams over TTS. Doesn't need to be a conversation today. I'll just say what my general strand. Over Discord for audio, I prefer camera on, but I usually give people the option. And then TTS, I just use the Mothership companion app. I've always been tempted to use something like Foundry, but I realized that if I do that, there would be just a lot more prep. Basically, that's the reason. So that's my general setup that I do. I have played in Foundry like as a player, but I've never run one, or you know, either like Roll20 or Owlbear or whatever. True horror. Okay. How do you find out most common questions? Yeah, totally. Yeah. Yeah, that's a fair way to do it, Gabriel. When you're talking about if people are asking you questions about the environment, just be like, how, you know, how do you find out? For sure. All right, down. Got Akigara instead. That's true. That's very true. Prison Echo Station on Saturday. Good luck. I hope that goes well, Gabriel. I use Discord and physical dice. Yeah, that's another thing. Like, do you do physical dice or do you just do it within the VTT? There's something about doing it inside the VTT where you actually get to see the history. Personally, I prefer that, but you know, if someone is, you know, wants to use physical dice and I'm wardening, then that's fine. Like, generally people are honest about what they get. At least I hope so. I have no way of proving that either. Yes, KISS principle, definitely. Keep it simple. I think that's what I think about if I think about Foundry, is that I think about, how deep am I going to get into the details here and try and figure out all the different lighting, and then is that really worth my time for the value of immersion? And you know, there's definitely an argument for it. However, in many cases, I don't like, especially if lighting is not a factor in the module, then I don't think there's a like, for me, there's not enough of a reason to actually go, all right, I'm going to learn Foundry just to like have a static map. But yeah, as I'm kind of alluding to here, is that if lighting is a factor and you are proficient at sorting out like the lighting for environments, then I think that can be quite cool. And it kind of goes back to your thing that you mentioned earlier, Sam, about like the lighting down the hallway type stuff. Then, you know, the VTT can kind of handle that for you as well. So yeah, cool. All right, so I usually do about 2 hours, so 2 hours is kind of like coming up now. But I wish you all the best for your games if you're prepping or running stuff. I hope it all goes well. Apologies for the audio only section of the stream. That was a bit strange, but yeah, it's a real pleasure, and I hope you've enjoyed the session and the stream, and that you got something out of like the agenda. Hopefully, I can add on some extra things and also some more Warden tips as well. But yeah, I will leave you guys to it. I hope you all have a great rest of the week. Thanks. Yeah, of course. Yeah. Thank you for hanging out as well. Much appreciated. And thanks for the feedback again. Yeah, chime in with like, so yeah, have a good one. Have a good night for most people. So yeah, look after yourselves. Take care. Bye, guys.